It's on there. You didn't tell me he's about to hit record.
Hello there. This is where the fun begins.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to Jedi Eternal.
No way.
No, listen, that intro is too good to stop. Normally, we would stop this and go back, but let me tell you that I can't. I gotta leave it in
You
there.
didn't tell me he's about
I gotta
to record.
leave it in there.
That stupid song
So,
stuck in my
you know,
head.
listen,
man.
it's to break up the monotony. Okay, you guys weren't expecting that. You
yeah.
weren't expecting us to talk during the intro music, but guess what? We did. But welcome back, everyone, to Jedi Eternal. I'm one of your hosts, Andrew Bullen, alongside Braxton Sticks Taylor.
Yeah.
Just found out something new about Braxton.
Hey, we're still learning something new.
We're still learning new things about each other all these years later. And he has a game series that he adores called Sticks.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know that. And have we been sitting here for probably about an hour talking into our microphones with not recording? Yeah,
As if
probably.
we're
As if
talking
we
to each
were
other.
recording. But and afterwards, after we had talked for like an hour, I was like, you know what? Probably should have recorded that.
Just put it on like
Put it
any
on
other
in
stuff
other
or
stuff or
something. We're just talking about video games
Yeah,
and movies.
But anyways, we
yeah.
just love each other so much. We
do.
can
We
just talk about.
Just love the sound
stuff
of our
whenever.
voices so
Yeah.
much that we.
But anyways, welcome back, everybody, and it's a special day because
Yes.
we are now one day after the season finale of The Mandalorian, season 3.
Yes.
Lots of feelings, lots of thoughts, lots of emotions.
Oh yeah.
And we'll get to all of that. Don't worry. We have a lot to say about it, as you guys, I'm
And-
sure, would know.
And you guys have a lot to say about it too, because
and-
we did a community discussion, and you guys have a lot of thoughts on this. So
Yes, and of course, we do appreciate that. And guess what? You can be a big part of that as well by becoming a Patreon member. Actually, I think most of our big comments were from our Patreon producers, so big shout out to them. And we're going to read through those here in a little bit, and you guys will be a part of that discussion. But we do want to remind you guys about that Patreon. It's $5 a month. That gets you instant access to our episodes as we post them. But you also get the exclusive podcast called And Other Stuff. There'll be a new episode of that coming out here soon.
Oh yeah.
It's that time. But also you get shout outs every week, as we're about to do right now. So I think it's worth the $5, and we would love to have you guys be a part of it. But we want to thank our Patreon producers, and that includes JB, Josh, and Birkinshaw, Tara Boland, Grace and David Gill, Alex Mason, Corey Wise, Jay Camdar, Jenna, and Promise. Thank you guys all so much for your contribution and for helping us become the best version of us that we can be.
Man, that's dramatic, but it's true. Every word of it's true.
We don't say anything but the truth here on Jedi Eternal.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a little bit short on news and
Yeah.
rumors this week because, of course, as you guys know, Celebration just happened. We've had the past 2 episodes we've done have been both over 2 hours long, I believe, or very close to
No,
that.
it have been, yeah.
I think they've both been over 2 hours, and that's because there's been so much to talk about. However, now it's kind of the calm after the storm. And so we are kind of a little bit short on that stuff, but we do have a lot to say about the finale. So stick around.
Yeah.
That will be our last thing that we do in today's episode is talk about that finale. And we want you guys to listen and then maybe go in those comments and let us know your thoughts after you listen.
Yeah, absolutely.
But let's go ahead and jump into our first news story. And our first news story here is that Kathleen Kennedy discusses possibility of more High Republic era shows.
Wow.
So, wowzers, folks.
So imagine that. We have 0 High Republic shows currently, and they're talking about it's a possibility we get more.
So Entertainment Weekly was interviewing Kathleen Kennedy. This was after, Celebration and all of the news and stuff that came out after Celebration. And they asked if it was going to be a possibility that we would get more High Republic era shows. And she said it could be because one of the things we talked about in publishing was how we could begin to incubate certain ideas. And in the case of the High Republic, there's been some wonderful storytelling that's gone on there. It's not necessarily what Leslie Headland is doing with Acolyte, but it certainly opens up the possibilities for being able to tell stories in that space. So, as you would kind of expect, there is, potential for more stories being told there. And I would assume a lot of that is going to depend on the success of the Acolyte. Even though, should it depend on the success of the Acolyte? I don't think so, because the High Republic is so much more than whatever that story may be.
Well, and as we know, the Acolyte is at the very end of that era anyway, right? So,
but I would say that if people love the Acolyte, then there's a much better chance we will get more things set within that era.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it spans a lot of time, right?
Absolutely.
And so there's so much that can be done there, and the publishing project that they've done. Is just a tiny drop in what can be told within that time span.
Yeah.
And so a lot of exciting potentials there. And I think without a doubt we will see more. I think outside of the Acolyte, and of course we have the little kids show too. Mm-hmm. But I think the most likely scenario in my eyes is in the vein of I think it's going to come from, this is a total just random prediction I'm going to give. Mm-hmm. I think that there's a good chance we could get a Lucasfilm animation series set during the High Republic. So think Clone Wars.
Okay.
Think Clone Wars at the Temple, Jedi Temple, like they did, stuff like that, but set during the High Republic.
And I would totally be into that.
And so it'd basically just be like the Jedi story of the week type scenario, maybe not super...
Like super serious, the story's not being progressed super hard.
And, kind of what you kind of expect from Lucasfilm animation most of the time. But set in the High Republic era and just being able to tell all kinds of different stories with a ton of different Jedis. And I think really it could work.
I'm on the same page with you, is that, imagine that. I feel like we're like a broken record. I'll say something, you're like, oh yeah, I agree. You say something, I agree. Anyway.
Two peas in a pod.
Anyway, kind of blanking what I was going to say
You were
now.
agreeing with me
about... Yeah. So basically, here's the thing, and this is how I view Clone Wars or whatever, Lucasfilm animation, like I said, insert Clone Wars, insert Bad Batch, insert whatever you want to say. For me, a lot of times it's not the biggest medium to tell stories, not typically. Now, as we saw through the latter part of Clone Wars, it became a phenomenal platform to tell this great story that intermingled between so many different characters, and there's a lot of drama, and it just became really awesome. But what my point is that a lot of times you just expect it to be a look inside of that era, a look inside of whatever's going on. Now, again, I think that's, for me personally, where Bad Batch kind of failed is because they didn't really realize what they were. Mm-hmm. And again, so I'm trying to be selective with my words here. But with Bad Batch, in my opinion, that was a very serious story told and put in a medium that was not very serious within itself, right? It's shortly after Order 66. It's like the downfall and the trading off of the clones, and it's a very somber, serious story. But I don't think that it was maybe the perfect medium for that. But that's just my opinion. What I'm getting at after all of this rambling is that I think this would be a perfect opportunity to do that same thing in the High Republic, because I mean, listen, I want great stories. I think obviously both of us do. Mm-hmm. Most of us who are listening want a great story, but at the end of the day, this is the perfect time to do Lucasfilm animation in that style of just kind of like fun, exploratory, like you said, tale of the week or the adventure of the week, because right now we don't have a look inside of the High Republic era other than what's written and some comics. Yeah. And I think, like I said, people are wanting to know more about this, not just hearing about it, right, or reading about it, but they want to see it for themselves. So, like I said, I think this would be a perfect opportunity for that.
Yeah, and with the end of the Bad Batch, the one season left to go, but once that season is complete, that will be the end of the Bad Batch, which means Lucasfilm Animation as a whole will be ready for a new project. And I don't think they're going to be resting on their laurels. I think they're definitely going to already, I would assume they're probably planning on the next step for that studio and what they're going to focus on. And, they do have kind of a side project in Tales of the Jedi, but as far as I know, that's still going to remain pretty small. So you would assume, going to be some other big project. And so I think the High Republic would be a perfect thing for that studio to do.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Easily. I agree.
I do want to mention a couple other things that Kathleen Kennedy had to say in this interview that I found interesting. There was another thing where they asked her about Jedi Survivor, and, talking about how it was about to release, and, if there was going to be potential to see him kind of move over into live action or anything like that. And she pretty much completely shut that down and basically said that they had no options at that right now. Like, they had no thought about any of that. So, she could be lying, but I think Kathleen Kennedy is typically not one to really like straight up lie about it as much as she would be like, well, we'll just have to wait and see if he was going to show up.
Because look back to a lot of different things that just came out and people speculated. Yeah, like you said, she's more of just like, well, it could happen.
But for her to be like, well, not right now, basically tells me she means no, we're not doing it right now.
Yeah.
But, I know a lot of people are always like, I'll guess this in live action. So I just want to throw that out there. Another thing is, and I thought this was one to think about, because they asked her how Lucasfilm decides which projects to make as movies and which ones work better as streaming shows. And with the future of Star Wars, I thought that this is kind of an interesting thing to think about and where their head is at with this. So I'll read her quote here. She said, I think your question is one of the most interesting ones facing many of us who are doing high-end premiere television, because there are so many things we can do in streaming now where we do massive effects. We really increase the scale and size of these stories, and I certainly find myself personally looking at it. Well, what is that distinction that moves something onto the big screen versus the smaller screen? And it's usually the intimacy of the character-driven stories that you try to really push in the television space, and then the spectacle that you can still preserve in the movie space.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that does make sense, honestly. I mean, I think that there's room for both in both mediums, obviously. But yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Whenever we went, and again, we kind of call back to this example a couple different times, but, hey, it is what it is. But when me and you went to that big IMAX, or no, it was the Dolby Cinema Theater thing, anyway, and we watched Rise of Skywalker in theater. I will just say, to me, I didn't walk out thinking that was a great story. I walked out and thought, like, that was a spectacle.
We would have left that movie probably in a completely different state of mind had we not went to the Dolby Cinema. But the Dolby Cinema was so bombastic.
Exactly.
And our seats were just like vibrating. When Palpatine shoots off that
that lightning pyre thing.
You feel it in your bones.
It was literally shaking you.
Yeah,
it was
and it's
so
like
awesome.
It created a whole extra level of immersion that we wouldn't have had if we went to the classic AMC down the road from us. It's not even our AMC around here.
AMC classic
it's so outdated. They forced them to use the label classic, AMC classic. They can't even call it an AMC.
So that should tell you something, right? But so what I was getting at, just to finish that thought, was that, like, again, we were so pumped after Rise of Skywalker. But it was really because it was a spectacle, because it was so bombastic, because it was so loud and action-filled and amazing and all these different, just like huge scale of events. But when we came out of it and we watched it again and we talked about it, and we're like, wow, that really wasn't great. There's
a lot of stuff that,
So I guess at the same time, I think there's obviously room for both. I think that Rise of Skywalker suffered because it didn't take its intimate storytelling as much as it probably could have. But anyway, so I guess I would say that, Kathleen kind of hit the nail on the head there, is that whether it's for good or bad or indifferent, that's certainly the way they're taking it for Star Wars.
And I think it makes sense, and I think that the perfect example of this, and the way I think if they want to do it in the best way possible, is with the Dave Filoni movie, because you have TV series that can be a little more intimate if they want to be. They can tell all these, but then it's going to lead up to an event that can be that spectacle of a movie, but doesn't have to take time to necessarily fill in all the pieces, because the pieces are already filled in.
It's already been done.
Now you can say, well, but a movie needs to be singular, and not people shouldn't have to go and watch everything else before. Grow up, just get over it. I'm serious. I get so tired of that. If you go to the theater to watch Star Wars, just watch all the Star Wars then. And like 98% of us are doing that. There's like that 2% that are gonna go watch a movie because somebody else that's probably already a huge Star Wars fan invited them, and they're gonna go and they're be like, "Oh, I'm lost. I don't understand what's going on." But that's on you, okay?
Well, I will be the median voice there.
Well, hold on, I'm not done.
Oh,
because no, what happens is if they're always so busy trying to make everything accessible to the 1%. Okay, it's going to going to cause that's what I think that was one of the big issues with the sequel trilogy.
Oh yeah, sure.
One of the big issues with the sequel trilogy.
They wanted every movie to be its own thing.
They wanted everything to be its own thing, and they wanted everything to be accessible and blah blah blah, and everybody to understand what's going on. And the people who are super into Star Wars, they know what they're talking about. I mean, that's the reason why the fans of Star Wars get so heated, and like there's always all these arguments, and everybody say that Star Wars fans are kind of the worst because they all are so opinionated and everything. But it's because they know everything.
Well, true.
They pay attention to all of it.
They're very passionate about the subject matter, and there's already enough existing stuff out there that they already know those existing things.
Right.
So when you break that,
and don't get me wrong, you can still have accessible Star Wars, okay? But that's what the what's it called? The Dawn of the Jedi is for. That's going to be super accessible because you don't have to know a thing.
You don't have to know nothing. Yeah.
You don't have to know anything at all. It's going to be completely new. Everything about it is going to be new.
Exactly.
But let the Filoni movie just be completely for the fans.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Let's not worry about the people who haven't been keeping up with the shows.
Right.
Just forget them. Okay. Let's.
Man, you're on one today. What?
I'm just saying there should be room for both.
I agree. I
That's
totally
what I'm
agree.
getting down to.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Let's have accessibility in Star Wars for everybody to jump in on a new point and understand what's going on. But let's also have something for the super fans like me, who's reading every book, who's watching every show. Let me have something to fully enjoy as well.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that there's again kind of the median voice being.
Yeah, go ahead. Just
shit out. Anyway, no, but I was just gonna say I think there's got to be a balance between both of those things. And in times past, I think it's been way too far on the other side of accessibility that you kind of make it to a point where it's detrimental to the story, where you keep backtracking so much to make sure everybody inclusively knows within that movie what's going on, that you can't further the story where it needs to go. So, but again, I think it's because it's super far on that side of accessibility. And I think you just need to really rein it in and maybe not go super far to the other side. Because again, I would like that too. But again, you say 98%, but I would say that there's probably a lot more people who are not like us, and some of our listeners who are dialed in and watched everything. Well, for instance, my boss, right? He loves Star Wars, and he constantly tries to talk to me about Star Wars, but he doesn't really keep up as much with the shows as like I do.
Yeah, what has he watched?
What do you mean?
What shows has he watched?
He keeps up with the new shows, but I'm saying like
then he's set.
Well, yeah. I'm just saying like I'll have watched okay, so the season finale just came up with season 2 of Mando. Up to this point he hadn't watched any of the episodes yet. And I told him like, well, tomorrow's the other day I said this week is the finale. He's like, oh, I'll have to hurry up and try to watch tomorrow real quick, you know.
Yeah. And I get that. And I know people who have said, "Oh, I'm just waiting for them all to come out before I
before
I
too.
watch it,"
Yeah.
and I get that too.
But as long as you do watch it, I guess, right? I mean,
But
that's what,
yeah, but if you watch it, you know, and when this comes out, I'm just saying, I don't think there's anything wrong with having this movie be like, okay, this movie is for all of you who have been watching all of these new current shows.
Mm-hmm.
This is the like almost like the thank you, okay, of being of keeping up with all of it, enjoying it. Now you can come to your local theater, sit back and enjoy this spectacle of a movie.
Yeah, we've already done the legwork.
We've
of
done
the
all the
intimate
legwork
storytelling
of getting you to appreciate and love all these characters.
Yeah.
Now just come sit back and watch the show and watch them unleash, you know, like all the craziness.
I do agree with that. I do agree with that.
And I totally, I'm being a little dramatic about it because I do understand, like, from a marketing perspective, from a writing perspective, everything, you always want something to be. The goal is always to have something for everyone that someone can appreciate, even if they've never been a part of it. That's always in anything. They always want that, right? Like, I mean, in any kind of genre, anything that has a continuous story, they still want you to be able to jump on from. I mean, how many times do you see that in like anything that has like a saga or something? But like, but this is a great jumping on point.
Yeah,
and, they always market it to where you can.
Yeah, and you don't want to be so niche to your specific genre and to your specific story that no one can jump on. But I do agree that you also need to reward the people who have been faithful to what you've done too. So yeah, I mean, I think that's where it comes in. Is like you got to have that balance. And when I say balance, it doesn't mean that every single movie has to be directly in the middle. Because here's the thing: what's beautiful about Star Wars is that there's 3 different trilogies, and when you go to different people, right, depending on who they are, you know, their age or their background or what they're interested in, you know, you might introduce a person to Star Wars for the first time using different different trilogies, right? If my dad, who already knows Star Wars, if my dad or say my grandpa or something like that would want to get into Star Wars for the first time, I of course would show him the original trilogy. And, you know, if I wanted to show my sister Star Wars, which again, she already knows because I like to think that all of my family's ingratiated to Star Wars to some degree because of me. Yeah. But anyway, I would probably show her the sequel trilogy, right? And the list goes on. But
yeah,
what I'm getting at is that you always want to have it to some degree where they can come in, because here's the thing: sequel trilogy, yes, it is dependent on what has come before, but you can still jump in and enjoy the sequel trilogy on its own. I mean that's debatable, I guess, to some people, but you get where I'm coming from.
Well, hey, you know, I've said it before on the podcast, but when I started dating who is now my wife, she had never seen any Star Wars. And I introduced her to Star Wars with The Force Awakens. It was in theater.
Yeah.
And it was in theater while we were dating. So that was her first Star Wars movie, and she thought it was really cool, and it really piqued her interest. And she wanted to know more. And then we marathoned all of Star Wars from there. And now her favorite, I think she says her favorite is A New Hope.
Nice.
But before that, you know, it was the new... You know, the new one, the modernness of it, right? That really piqued her interest,
right?
And then she learned to appreciate the entire saga,
right?
But yeah, when it comes to, I think there is a really valuable thing to the sequel trilogy, because for example, like a young teenager, okay. You show, I mean, let's just be honest. If you show them A New Hope, right, they're going to be like, what is this old movie? Like, kids don't like to put up with old stuff, okay? Like, I know, we all cherish the original trilogy, and we don't want to speak bad about it. And I think it's, you know, I absolutely adore everything about the original trilogy. But a young teenager is going to look at it and they're going to be like, I don't want to watch this.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it doesn't have the shiny new look that modern movies have. But you show them The Force Awakens, and it can invest them and be like, oh, okay. And then you can go back and show them. So there is, I won't deny the potential and importance of what the sequel trilogy can be.
Which, and again, I think it harkens back to what I said earlier. I think the problem with the sequel trilogy for the hardcore fans, though, and overall for the most average watchers as well, is that, again, it tried so hard to be on the opposite end. It tried so hard to be inclusive. It tried so hard to be accessible that it
alienated
the people who are actually Star Wars fans.
Yeah.
Anyway,
and they killed Luke Skywalker in the middle of the trilogy.
Yeah, exactly. We're not going to get into that. We've been harping on this for a while, but yeah.
Okay, one last thing.
This has nothing to do with what our actual topic is.
we're on something today, bro.
I know, we're talking about, this is going to be a shorter episode.
Yeah. We're making sure to fill it in, huh? One last thing I did want to mention about in that interview as well was that they did ask her about Obi-Wan Kenobi getting another season, and she went on to say that right now there is not anything going on for another season, but she did say that maybe they end up incorporating him into some other stories, or eventually even a movie, she said. But she said right now there's no plans for expansion, blah, blah, blah. But she definitely left the door open for more Obi-Wan in some way, shape, or form. And listen, we've harped on this so much, but I do just want to say real quick that, like, with Kenobi, you guys know our stance on the show. There was some really bright moments, but there was also some really
and there's unfortunately a little bit more than the bright moments.
And so, us being huge Kenobi fans left that saying, I don't think we want another season. It's kind of the way we ended up feeling. And I still think I say that I don't necessarily know we need another season of Kenobi, but I absolutely think we need more Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan in Star Wars,
in whatever capacity.
So that can be cameos. There's ways you can do it, and I think absolutely do it. He wants to be in Star Wars.
He even said it. He
wants to be Obi-Wan. Let's figure it out. Okay, just whatever you got to do to throw him in there.
Right.
There are absolutely different ways to do it, and so I hope that's the plan. I hope they get him involved in ways. Show him as a Force ghost. Show him during he could make an appearance during Andor. There's no reason why he couldn't.
Sure.
Just saying.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a perfect time for him to show up. But at the same time, let Ewan continue to grow older, and in another 10 years, maybe would be a good time to do one more Obi-Wan Kenobi movie. Something like that, where
older man
you lead him right up into A New Hope. Something like that, where you could tell one more good story with Ewan as Obi-Wan, and I think that could be something really special.
Yeah.
But I do think we can wait for that. But absolutely use him any way you can until then. So.
I agree. Totally.
Okay, let's move on.
Yeah. So anyway, this next one should probably not cause as much discussion, but we'll see.
We'll see.
Hold on to your hip waders, folks. Anyway, so
I did chug a big cup of Mountain Dew before I did. I drank a big old cup of Mountain Dew before I got on this podcast. So.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. So our second and actually last. See, this is our last news piece this week, so he's just really making up.
I was really just throwing in some padding in there for you.
So, second and last is Star Wars Tales of the Jedi Season 2 gets a release date window. So, last episode, it's the second to last episode that we did, we had kind of in length discussed Star Wars Tales of the Jedi getting a Season 2, because that was one of the announcements we got at Celebration, but... one thing that did not happen during that panel and all that stuff that they were, I think is the Lucasfilm Showcase or whatever it was, I don't remember. Point I'm trying to get at is that whenever they had announced the second season, they did not actually tell us the release date or any kind of window for that, which was kind of funny. But shortly thereafter, a press release was issued by Lucasfilm recapping kind of the whole Celebration 2023 and just all the announcements. And they just kind of recapping it. And within that, they then kind of gave us this release window, and it just says that Tales of the Jedi Season 2 is currently in production and is set to release in 2024. So yeah, it is kind of funny that they didn't tell us within the actual announcement, but it was like in some recap later on. But anyway.
Yeah, apparently it was just like in the Lucasfilm press release later that they did it, and so in 2024, which does start to give us again kind of an image of what to expect next year. You know, we're getting second season of Andor, the third and final season of Bad Batch. We're getting the Acolyte, and now we know we're getting Tales of the Jedi season 2. And I would say that pretty much is beginning to wrap up probably what we're getting for next year. Like we're really, and that's actually super awesome, because for a long time now, we've really speculated what's coming in any certain year.
Right.
And so now we're finally starting to like get an idea, because supposedly Skeleton Crew is still coming out this year. So
yeah, true.
If anyone was thinking, well, what about Skeleton Crew? Supposedly it's still coming out this year. I still kind of wonder. I mean, I guess maybe it's going to be a late fall, November, December release, most likely.
Right.
But then, yeah, so that sets us up with kind of 2024 of Andor, Bad Batch, Acolyte, and Tales of the Jedi.
Yeah.
And really, I don't think that's too bad. I mean,
it doesn't have some, in my opinion, other than maybe Andor, like it doesn't have like a bunch of heavy hitters like we've got like this year or whatever. But
well, I think the Acolyte is going to be the biggest
true
of 2024.
Yeah, because I guess this year, I mean, it's like the biggest hitters is Mando and Ahsoka. I mean, you know, Skeleton Crew, you know,
we don't know. We don't really know yet, right? Like,
so I guess
we know so little about Skeleton Crew still.
Yeah.
And I mean, they haven't really showed that much of it. But yeah, I would say the Acolyte is the big one next year. Andor, of course, Andor will be big. Don't get me wrong. People loved it, and so I think people are gonna be excited. But I think that the Acolyte just has that potential to be something so new and exciting to people. But yeah, we'll see if it pulls it off.
Yeah, we'll see. I was going to say that, you know, the first episode premiered in October of 2022 for season 1 of Tales of the Jedi, and it is currently in production for season 2, which is kind of, you know, relatively early in 2023. So I just out of curiosity, for those who are listening, you know, let us know in the comments when you think that season 2 is going to drop. Is it going to be kind of like early in Q1 of 2024, you know, or maybe it's going to be a little bit later? Love to know your thoughts. So let's move on.
Yeah, so we're going to jump into our rumors, and we're going to kind of stick with talking about some Andor, as Andor Season 2 appears to be filming in Winspit Quarry, Dorset, and that is the same location that they filmed Saw Gerrera's base.
Yeah.
So that appears to basically confirm that we will have more Saw Gerrera, which should be no surprise to anyone, as we know what happens in Rogue One and what we have seen in season 1 of Andor. It only makes sense we're going to have more Saw Gerrera probably play a more pivotal role in season 2, and I think there's a lot of potential there. Of course, a lot of exciting things that can happen. And as we've said many times, we do believe that with the season 2 of Andor, we're going to continue to see a lot of familiar things that maybe we didn't see a lot of in the first season. Also, I did want to mention, because I don't think we've talked about this, but surprisingly, with no real fanfare in the press release for Lucasfilm, they also kind of casually threw out there Andy Serkis returning in season 2.
Yeah, that's true. That's a great point.
I'm not gonna say like for sure he's survived. They could be throwing his name in there because he was just in the first season. Maybe they show a quick scene flashback or something
from their escape,
and so he had to be included.
Yeah,
you know, I'm not gonna go ahead and be like confirmed Andy Serkis survived and he's gonna be. But I mean, I think we all hope there is that big moment reveal that he did survive, because I just think
he's a great character.
He was a great character. Yeah. We want to see that he made it. You know, it's gonna be one of those like pump your fist moments, you know. So anyway, but if that is the case, it's really surprising that they just revealed it in this press release.
Random,
because it could have been one of those cool, like, exciting teases or surprises. I mean, but you know, whatever.
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 All right, so our second and last rumor for this week is kind of like the first one in the sense that it's not really that surprising. But this rumor is that Lars Mikkelsen hints that there could be a big story reveal at the end of the Ahsoka series. Again, as we've talked about, we know that these how should I say, like series is right on Disney Plus. It's really leading up to a big culmination of some kind of event. At which point we thought was a event series, but is now event movie. But we know that there's a lot of stuff going on. Again, I don't think it's really that surprising that there's supposedly a big story reveal at the end of Ahsoka, because I think that Ahsoka is definitely one of those series that is going to contain a lot of big stuff. Obviously it's kind of the resolution, supposedly, I guess we'll see, of Rebels and that storyline, and kind of the cliffhanger that we got on the last season of Rebels. It's kind of the continuation, possibly resolution of that. So again, I don't think it's that surprising, but Drew, was there any more context to his statement?
Yeah, so he said that he was actually praising Dave Filoni's writing for the series. He said his writing is very good, it's very strong. And he says you will probably not totally know what it's all about until the last scene. Which, if anyone has paid any attention to Thrawn, you'll know that the thing with Thrawn is he's always the smartest guy in the room. He's always got a plan and a plan on top of that, and a couple secret plans on top of those plans. And the thing about him is that you always think this is what he's doing,
right,
but then surprise, he was doing this all along.
Right.
And so, no doubt, whatever his big reveal is and stuff on Ahsoka is, there will probably be that moment where you're like, surprised, this is what I'm really,
right,
because that's what he does. He's a strategic mastermind.
Well, and it's kind of like, again, it would be interesting if they used the show to thematically illustrate his mind in a way that, again, he is throwing out all these strings, right? And they all seem very random. And so all of a sudden he pulls all the strings at once, and it comes to a conjoined knot at the end, snagging his prey, whatever. And it would be interesting that, throughout the show, it's kind of the same way. Like, as you said, like we don't know what his plans are, and it's going to seem kind of like random. And so at the very end, he pulls all the threads, right, and then there's the big reveal, so it does make sense. And again, as I said earlier, I don't know that it's that surprising, as in terms of putting it as a rumor. I think it's pretty expected, but anyway.
Yeah. And Timothy Zahn wrote the character. He's the one who wrote the character of Thrawn and has wrote all the books that included Thrawn. And it is very reassuring to hear that Dave Filoni did consult with Timothy Zahn about the Thrawn character, and so I think that that's really reassuring to know that the guy who created him and is essentially the mind of Thrawn has been consulted and has been a part of this process, and that really excites me and makes me think we're going to see a very authentic Thrawn in live action.
So if you're familiar with him in the books, get excited.
Yeah. And if you are not familiar with him yet,
still get excited. But
also maybe give the books a chance.
Yeah, absolutely.
There are canon Thrawn books. There are also the legend ones. But if you want to know his canon backstory, there are like six of them that you could read. So
yeah, for sure. A lot of good stuff out there.
Yeah.
From what I heard anyway. Not much of a reader, but hey.
We're going to, let's go ahead and just jump straight into our discussion and our review. Let's just jump right into it. If you want to lead us off on that.
Yeah, so kind of just join it together. So obviously today our big main topic is, of course, to go over the Mandalorian Season 3 finale, which is Episode 8 or Chapter 24, called The Return. We're going to go ahead, obviously, and for our discussion and our topic especially, we're going to go ahead and just say big old spoiler alert. Stop here if you have not watched it, or if you don't want to know. If you don't care, just continue on listening. And if you haven't, if you haven't watched it, come on back after you watch it. Anyway, So I just always like to say that because, I hate to just rip off the Band-Aid and say all these spoilers and then we're like, oh, I didn't say anything. So anyway, our community discussion today actually does, I just tied it directly into this because it's such a big event. It's a series finale. I did go ahead and ask you guys what you thought about it. Let me go ahead and get my specific stuff up here. I had asked, now that we have seen the finale of Mandalorian Season 3, what are your thoughts on the episode and the season as a whole? And second part to this question is, now that the season has ended, what do you think of where the series will go? Do you think it's coming back strong for Season 4, or more of a focus on the other upcoming series? And we have some very passionate answers today, which I respect. So let's go ahead and start off with Mr. Alex Mason. He says, the finale was great. The combat was awesome. The season as a whole, I was pretty disappointed in. I wasn't excited to watch it every week. I actually had to catch up to watch last week's episode. Honestly, if anyone asked me, I would say that you only have to watch episodes 2, 7, and 8 to know what happened this season. Don't get me started on my aggravation with the cameos. I love Jack Black, but it was an immediate disconnect from Star Wars once all that happened. All in all, I think you can tell that they haven't focused on this as much as they are with other projects, and it is disappointing. I would rather have waited longer for the season than watch some of the episodes that we got. As far as the series as a whole, unfortunately, I feel like they have put Din in such a position to be a side cameo character by this point. I don't see a big need for a season until into the event movie. Unless they pull a somehow Gideon return junk, which they kind of did, right?
Only if it's announced in Fortnite.
Yeah, well, let's not talk about that. I love The Mandalorian and what it has got us to, but I don't know if I want to see another season like we just had. If only 3 to 4 episodes of the season are going to be vitally important and good, then just make the season for 50-ish minutes episodes and call it. Sorry this was long, just had some thoughts about it, obviously. And Alex, totally fine. Again, it's a season finale. It's okay to have some thoughts.
Do not apologize. We love it.
Yeah. Anthony James Johnson says, the action for the last 2 episodes was top tier, but everything resolved too neatly for me. There wasn't enough struggle or suspense, and I felt like everything happened because this next thing needed to happen. It didn't feel organic. And Anthony, I totally agree with you, and we'll get more into our thoughts a little bit later, but I think that's a great observation that I personally share.
All completely valid so far,
yeah.
What everyone's saying.
Corey Allen Wise says, I love this episode. It kept me on the edge of my seat. Masterful Din shined once again and showed why he's the best at what he does, which I completely agree. The combat, phenomenal in this episode, especially from Din, obviously.
Yeah, for sure.
However, I am disappointed in not seeing a build-up to the Ahsoka series. No General Thrawn, and the Mythosaur was just a tease. Kind of disappointing, but overall, all I give the season is a 3, a B+. The last 2 episodes made up for the rest, and it was good to see Grogu use the Force, save Bo and Dim, and help fight. Great episode.
I would just like to say I like that Corey has his own rating system here.
Yeah. Corey, I would like to know how you evaluate it. I'm very curious. No, but again, Corey sharing a lot of our same thoughts.
Good points.
And here comes little Grace Boann Shields Gill Luann Stevenson, which is, of course,
that's my sister.
Yeah, it's not her full name. I was just making that up.
My BB sister.
She is not a fan at all, in her words. Honestly, at this point, I feel like the first season was great storytelling. Second season grew the story as well as playing towards the fandom. This season has nothing.
Nothing.
The quote-unquote growing story seems like something that could have been resolved in, at the most, a 3-episode arc. That's even stretching it. If they are moving from Din, go ahead, but make it a bit more seamless. I feel like they have just forgotten all of Din's growth and completely forgot the whole Luke training with Grogu. I expected to see more. Star Wars shows, I feel, are just coasting on the fact that it is quote-unquote Star Wars, and they know their fans will watch it no matter what, giving no incentive to give a great story, which I find a waste. Rant over. Grace is very passionate. And Alex agrees with her, too. Alex Mason agrees with her. He says, thank you. Coasting is a good way to put it, and you're right. It is a waste. Last but not least, Mark Hetherington, please forgive me if that is not how you pronounce it, but he says, It was a very different to the previous two, and I didn't think it was as good, but still enjoyed and had some great moments. Looking forward to where it goes next. So, first of all, thank you everybody for commenting.
Yes,
we
thank
absolutely love your interaction. But let's just go ahead and jump straight into our thoughts.
Let's
and
do
again,
it.
I think we all are
dive
on
in.
the same
I was gonna say, here's
page
the,
here.
yeah,
right?
yeah. Here's the thing. Everything everybody just said
It's kind of our thoughts already.
is
right?
I mean, they're right on the money. But but to say all of it's right is somewhat conflicting, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
it is, and
Yeah.
so, and that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah,
That's where I'm at right now. Is I am so conflicted.
yeah,
Because I enjoyed so much about this episode.
yeah.
I did.
Yeah, absolutely.
I really enjoyed the action that we got in this episode. Some of the best we've gotten with Mando,
yeah.
showing
Yeah,
what
absolutely.
Mando's capable of, which sometimes I feel like we don't get to see enough of that.
Right.
And he really shined in this episode. And we got some great Grogu moments.
Oh yeah.
And so
I was really hoping to see him a little bit more combatant with his
Sure.
Force abilities, but
Sure.
you know,
yeah, well, for a while I was like, do you not remember how to use the Force? What's
did you
going
not
on?
train with him for 2
Yeah,
years?
yeah,
You know
yeah.
what's going on here? Yeah.
Well, that's so we know now that's not the case. That
Oh,
was
really?
misspoken.
Okay, okay.
It wasn't 2 years, but anyways, we can get into that at some other time.
Yeah. Well.
But yeah, it's like so there was some really great moments. I absolutely adored the Qui-Gon shields. Okay, yeah, that's what, like the Phantom Menace callback there.
Yeah.
Where they had the shields and there was enemies in each portion of it, and
He's like
Mando
systematically
going
next shield,
through
next
next shield and going
yeah.
through and just wiping them out,
Dude.
taking their stuff, going into the next one.
So good.
Wow.
It was great. That was really great.
May go down as one of my favorite Star Wars scenes.
Like fight scenes.
Yeah, like fight scenes.
Yeah,
like probably
yeah.
in my top 10.
Yeah.
Like it was really
Phenomenal.
just cool.
Yeah.
And it just it classically showed like why Mando is just he's Mando. Like he's on another level.
Yeah.
And they just don't get to show that enough.
Mm-hmm.
I had chills the whole time. I loved it.
Yeah.
And I loved the fight with him and Grogu against the Praetorians.
Mm-hmm.
That was cool too. And seeing like Grogu, yes, we didn't see Grogu like do much fighting, but he was using the Force to assist.
Yeah, it was like pulling their weapons away,
Pulling your
or
weapons
pushing
away,
them towards them. Or
yeah,
something.
stuff like that, which was really cool to see and see like them working together in that way.
Right, and I think it's a precursor, right, as to him now, taking him on as his apprentice, and they're taking on more missions together as a group. It's not just like, well, he's tagging along and he has to protect him. Like, no, now Grogu's his apprentice, and they're going to be, again, it just seemed like a precursor to see how they're going to fight together.
Right.
Which I thought that was pretty neat. you
Right.
know.
So yeah, I liked a lot of that. But looking on towards a more negative side,
Yeah.
no matter how good this episode was, and I think there was a lot of good, I just can't help but still think though that this season was so not really needed. Not all of it.
Yeah.
There was kind of like I think Grace said, there was like, you could have done this in like 3 episodes and told the story that needed to be told. And I think some of that goes back to the fact that I think like Favreau loves a good Monster of the Week story, and I think I would be curious to know how much Filoni was even involved in this season.
I agree.
I don't think he was very involved. I think he's been focused on Ahsoka, and I do wonder if that the difference.
It makes you wonder.
Is that the difference between this season and the other seasons? Because something about this
was lacking,
season,
right?
it feels like something's missing.
Okay,
right?
so I will just throw this in here real quick, and just to supplement what you're saying, is that I shared a clip with you, some of you may have seen this. It was an interview with Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni sitting together, and was talking about. Sorry, hit the mic. Talking to some interviewer, and basically, I can't remember the exact wordage and the exact context, but it was talking about the Ahsoka series, and it was talking about Sabine Wren and how she was wielding a lightsaber and stuff. And basically, what the interviewer had insinuated was that Sabine Wren was a Jedi because she was wielding a lightsaber, and Jon Favreau agreed with him. And then all of a sudden, Dave Filoni was like, well,
he
that's
jumped in,
not
yeah.
the case.
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
like, because, a Jedi has to follow the order and be inducted. And it's not just because. And then John was like, yeah, well, that's true. And he's like, what about this? And he's like, well, da, da, da. And he's like, and then the joke of the video was like, oh, well, this is what we do all the time and this is our job or whatever. But so, yeah, what you said makes sense. Like, what if he was Filoni, who was really the brains behind the Star Wars lore and bringing that flesh to, like, say season 2? What if he is focusing more on Ahsoka series and that's his baby, his thing,
Yeah. I mean, obviously, if we look at this episode, the goal was, now that it's finished, clearly the story was to unite the Mandalorians.
Yeah.
That is obviously, it was the goal. It was to set up Bo-Katan being their new leader, and basically Mando was used as, I guess, a kind of just like the person you followed through that story. But this season was not necessarily really about Mando.
No,
right?
No. Well, the whole point of the season was about the unity of the Mandalorians, and again, kind of echoed in the final battle scene was it wasn't just Bo-Katan that could take him down. It wasn't just Mando that could take him down. It was all of them together.
Yeah, but what is weird about this season and why I still am kind of conflicted even about the last episode is we went this whole season and it didn't feel that connected to what we had been dealing with before in previous seasons until all of a sudden the last 2 episodes are incredibly tied into what had happened before, right? And Moff Gideon's back and it wraps up everything. Those last 2 episodes wrapped up everything that Mando has been leading up to.
Yeah, Anthony James Johnson said it perfectly. He said everything resolved too neatly.
Everything resolved.
Yeah,
it's all resolved, and it's just like, oh, these last 2 episodes wrapped it all up, and it's done.
Yeah,
and I'm like, oh, okay.
Well, this whole season, it felt like a means to an end, right? It felt like, hey, we have to get ready for this event and get ready for the Ahsoka series. And basically what we need is for the Mandalorians to be united to come against Thrawn. So there's your idea. Use that to create season 3.
But what's weird about, and why I think they absolutely were thinking that, but what's weird is, like, I think there's going to be another season of The Mandalorian before we get the movie.
I think so too.
So
where's it going to go?
What does that mean exactly?
Yeah.
Is it going to go back to kind of the first season where you're going to just go on adventures with Mando and Grogu because they're going to be part of the doing bounty stuff for the New Republic, and they kind of just go on a Monster of the Week stories, and it's not as vital to the overall narrative? Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's kind of what they're hoping to do. But because the story that has been told is finished.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. Here's the thing. Whatever comes next, right, unless it's just completely throwaway episodes, really, it's basically you're going to have to set up a new story. But how are you going to do that? Because we already know, again, we're going to the Ahsoka series, which is eventually going to lead into this event movie. It's already set up to lead into that.
Yeah.
So what's the point of a 4th season? Like, what are you going to do?
And I think the other thing that's a little frustrating is they have trained us they've trained us so far to think that all of these series connect and they support what comes next. Yeah. Right. Book of Boba Fett was so integrated into the Mandalorian that, and I had to essentially kind of defend that because I said, well, but they're wanting it to be that way and blah blah blah. It's just not marketed that way. But then you have this season and they kind of do the opposite. Yeah. They didn't really do much about the fact that we're getting Ahsoka.
Right. They didn't tie I can't remember who said it.
Other than the Shadow Council having a discussion about Thrawn's return. That's it. But that really was it. Yeah. And that wasn't really much when they've kind of trained us to assume that these series are all going to be closely entwined. Right. Right. Yeah. But really this one wasn't. And honestly, it was a cute little ending for Mando and Grogu. Mm-hmm. They actually kind of got a great little ending. Yeah. And so now it's like, well, they got their own little place. They're this little family. And it's like, so it's almost like should it be done? You know,
Right? Yeah.
like,
yeah,
are
yeah.
are we going to disrupt that now when you kind of ended? I don't know, man. It was felt so weird. And the ending, like the ending was odd to me. It's showing them at their little home and he's playing with the frog and it like does the like goes into the circle, like zooms in and then it's gone. There's no after credits to tease anything.
I literally several people were saying like, oh, it was after credit scene, and I'm like, I sat through the whole thing and there was like, ain't no after credit.
And it's
scene.
just
and I think the whole like the weird zoom in thing, I think that was like a little callback when he was training with Luke. What he kept using the Force for was to get the frog so he could eat them, and that was kind of like a thing like, hey, look at him now, he's grown, and now he's as we saw through episode 7 and 8 where he's like using it to non-conflict type thing.
But you know what's baffling about that is that was in the Book of Boba Fett, so it wasn't even in the Mando seasons.
Right,
so you know, it's funny.
Yeah, I understand.
It's like every time I feel like I've got them figured out and like what they're trying to do, they do something completely different. I'm like, I don't get it anymore. I don't get what they're trying to do.
I know. I completely agree. You know, and that's kind of why I had that follow-up question is like, you know, where do you think this series is going to go? You know, like why, you know, and I think from our answers, like no one really knows, you know, and I think that's a recurring thought. Well, how would we know?
How would we know? They didn't give us any other than all we know is Mando gets to live on Navarro and he's doing bounties with
the New Republic.
With the New Republic.
Yeah.
And that, to me, that sets up the opportunity to do a bunch of one-off episodes, adventures with Mando, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's what it sets up for me. I do think that in the bigger picture, when it comes time to deal with Thrawn, the New Republic are going to go, we know a guy who can help.
Right.
That type of scenario. I think eventually that's what that leads to. And of course, Ahsoka knows him. There's going to be multiple people that know of him, right? And they're going to be able to call him in.
So it's not just so like, well, why is he showing up?
Because Mando's going to be there to help, obviously, when it comes down to it, when the time comes.
Right.
And I think that him being a part of the New Republic now, or well, helping the New Republic to a degree. I guess they're like not supposed to be doing it.
Pro bono, case by case basis. Right?
But I think that's just kind of getting him more in with that group, so it's more natural when the time comes. But yeah, I mean, that's all that we know.
Yeah.
And I think it was just interesting. But I do want to kind of go kind of through the episode a little bit. I don't think we need to go through every single thing, but
yeah. Because our movie starts in 5 minutes.
Oh yeah, we gotta go. We're about to go watch that D&D movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we need to hurry. But I do want to. One thing I want to mention. You know, we talked about the shields thing, which was just fantastic. One of my favorite parts. And the shot when he grabs the shock baton. And the shield at the same time, and he's sitting there. I was like, that is a sick image right there.
So good.
Like, there's gonna be a Funko Pop of that. No doubt.
Most likely.
But and then R5 getting his moment right. With, and then when the little mouse droid comes and sets the alarm, and then it leaves and it comes back with a bunch of them, and they're all just like running into him. That was funny. Star Wars gold right there. Comedic gold.
That's how you do Star Wars comedy for me.
Yeah.
That was just so good. That
was top of the line Star Wars comedy right there.
Love
it. But so this is another one of the things that just absolutely baffled me about all this. So they've been talking about cloning. They've been talking about all this cloning stuff and about needing Grogu for some special thing, and we've talked about it, and we've talked about how they were teasing the sequel trilogy and how they were talking about Palpatine and blah blah blah. But guess what? They weren't. It was never. It was all. It was all about Gideon the whole time. And to take it even one step further, not only was it all about Gideon, but then they show the clones in this, and they die within like a minute. They're all gone. They don't even.
They don't even do anything with.
They don't even do anything.
Yeah, and that like I
was
remember
like, what?
Yeah, right after I had got done watching, which was like a little bit after you had got done watching it. You know, I had kind of like commented to you some of my, because usually how it works.
I do want to say I do wonder if the army that he was using was potentially Gideon clones.
Yeah. They didn't emphasize that.
They didn't. They
did
never
not
showed them.
emphasize
But
that.
I mean, I just wondered.
Yeah, I agree. I'm trying to find what I had said to you.
And then were the clones in the hallway? Were those the only ones? Were there more? Was the Gideon that he fights, was he a clone?
Well, exactly. Well, because Alex Mason said if they bring it like, well, somehow he returned. Like, well, what if it was
There's
a clone?
actually
you know?
there's I mean, they could go so many ways with that if they wanted to. I hope they don't.
Yeah. Well, right. Yeah, I agree too. Again, I feel like they just had so many loose end threads that they just like, okay, we just got to tie all this up.
But yeah, but it's a little frustrating to me because all this time we thought it was leading to the sequel trilogy, and then it wasn't.
Yeah.
But why not? Because the clone idea didn't do anything.
And
They didn't follow through with
I
any
think
of it.
here's the thing. I think we're not seeing the whole picture because they didn't really tell us that there was the whole picture. But I think that I think it does lead into what Palpatine does.
Well,
I just think that here's the thing. As we can see from the Shadow Council, right? I think that Gideon is clearly just on his own tangent. Like, he doesn't care about Thrawn. He doesn't care about anything else. He wants to be the leader. So I think he took this project, Necromancer, and tied it into what he wanted. So I guess maybe what they're doing, just to give them some defense here, maybe what they're doing is just trying to show you a glimpse of what it's capable of later on. But
I mean, to a degree, yes. But what I'm saying is why couldn't it have been about Project Necromancer? Why did they have to make it about Gideon, which then they didn't even utilize that?
Well, and this is what I texted you, and I'm remembering it now. What I texted you was I was so frustrated about was the fact that you looked at these clones, and there's tons of them, and they're fully formed. They look exactly like he does. And the way he was talking was as if they already had Force sensitivity. They could use the Force. They were ready to go. All he had to do is press the big red button and release them from their cages, so to speak. But flash forward to the sequel trilogy, which is later on, like decades later on, right? From what we're at right now in Mando. And it insinuates in this movie, in the sequel trilogy movies, that Palpatine never perfected it. Like, you could see even in his form in Rise of Skywalker is that he's like decrepit and rotting and has all these machines to help him even survive. And again, I think it's just so funny because I'm like, where did that come from? Right? Yeah. Because like, how did they quantify 2 decades almost before the events of Rise of Skywalker that all of a sudden Project Necromancer was like perfected, and that somehow Palpatine, who's over everything, doesn't have it. It was a weird thing.
And I understand, like, we got to stretch this out, right? Like, we got 25 more years to go, or I don't know, something like that.
Yeah.
Something before we get to the sequel trilogy. So, like, it's got to take a while to get this stuff done.
Yeah.
So they can't have, like, already figured it out and blah, blah, blah. But I just thought that it was weird that they had that. And he mentioned them being, like, Force sensitive. But again, like, were they really? Because we don't see that.
Well,
we don't see that they were Force sensitive. I mean, I don't know. It was very strange. So to jump forward a little bit, we get to the point where just kind of another moment I really appreciated was when the Praetorians all attack Grogu, because Grogu comes in, he's like, no. And they go and attack him, and Grogu jumps out of the IG-12 and he's jumping along like at the light, and he's laughing.
Yeah.
Which is just, Grogu's so crazy.
He's
like Grogu's
insane.
just like
he's literally insane.
Grogu's just like this insane little dude.
Yeah.
I mean, he's getting attacked by 3 Praetorian guards and he's laughing about it. But
and again, I said it earlier, but I was really hoping that we would see him do a little bit more, you know what I'm saying? Like, and use it offensively, which again, one could speculate, well, he trained with Luke, and Luke said, that one of the tenets is that you should not be using the Force for fighting, right? For offense or whatever. But still, come on.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But then, of course, Mando just destroys the Praetorian guards, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And so cool to see after he's already fought a bunch of people, by the way. So he's he's just on another level. And I loved that they just showed him that way too this time.
Yeah.
They're like, just go full blown, show how amazing he can be. I'm going to skip through this, but they fight Moff Gideon. And the big thing about the fight, honestly, is that and within that, the Darksaber is destroyed. Which I get. I understand what they're doing.
I have mixed feelings about that.
It was symbolic, right? totally symbolic moment. And I understand what they were trying to portray, but to be honest, it bothered me. It felt like the Last Jedi again, where they destroyed an iconic weapon.
They intentionally did something shocking
for the shock effect, for the the symbolism behind it.
Yeah,
but it's like, man, that Darksaber's been around for a long time.
Into the Old Republic,
and now,
you know what I'm saying?
And now you're gonna fix it with a brown strap around it or something, and I mean, you know it's coming back.
Yeah,
it's gonna have some quirk to it, but it's gonna. I mean, she's gonna still use it. Like they're gonna, you know what I mean? They're going to.
Yeah.
But it's like probably just sell more toys. They're like, we gotta have a new design for this thing so we can sell more toys.
Yeah, probably.
But so that was kind of weird. But then Grogu, and a callback to the first season, uses this force shield to
that was pretty cool.
Protect them in the flames to a whole bigger degree, right?
Yeah.
Which was a beautiful moment to just, again, as always, Grogu is amazing. He's just, he's awesome. He'll always be awesome. And so, Gideon is gone. They go to show Ragnar being inducted into the Mandalorian way. Yeah. And Mando asks if Grogu can be inducted as well, and the armor is like, well, he can't speak, he can't take the creed,
he can't say the creed,
and Grogu's like, oh. And
dude, I was waiting for something to happen to him start speaking.
I was waiting for him to just say something right there.
Yeah.
But then they basically Mando's like, well, give him parental permission, so he adopts him right then and there. And I'm like, oh, it's Grogu Jaren. And then they're like, Din Grogu. I'm like, wait, what?
Wait a second. These naming conventions are way off.
Well, hold on, what? And so that doesn't make any sense. So I'm not ever going to go into all that but just so we're clear though, like everybody else uses the last name as so I don't know. I don't understand I guess for whatever reason, Din is the clan name.
I guess so.
Or the house name or whatever you want to call it, right? But everybody else is the last part of the name.
It's kind of inconsistent.
I don't really know what was going on there. But anyways, it's Din Djarin and Din Grogu.
Yeah.
So that's what it is.
There you go.
Because I even said out loud, I was like, oh, Grogu Djarin. And then they're like, Din Grogu. And I'm like, wait, what?
Wait a second.
But, and yes, they do take a deep dive and show us the Mythosaur one more time.
Again, complete tease. Yeah.
Okay.
I was really expecting it to come up like at that last ceremony, so that all of them could technically take their helmets off, right?
They obviously were showing Grogu sensed it, right?
Yeah.
You could tell Grogu had a connection with it. You could tell in that moment.
Yeah.
Because Grogu kind of like felt it and went and looked down, and then it like kind of opened its eyes again and was like it could sense each other. So
whatever.
Again, it was totally a tease for, I guess, something in the future.
Yeah, we'll see.
Maybe the movie. Maybe the movie is when they'll bring that into play for the big battle. That is inevitably going to happen.
And who knows that some of these other series don't tie back to Mando again, Boba Fett did. I guess I don't know.
Who knows, right?
Who knows?
Nobody knows.
No one knows. And literally, no one knows.
Nobody knows. But and then Mando gets asked to join or help out the New Republic, or actually he kind of asks about it, but and then he goes to his little new home. IG-11 becomes a marshal of Navarro, and then he's going to live there and do his little bounty stuff, and it's a little storybook ending, really.
Yeah, it's just neatly wrapped up,
And I just felt weird about it. I didn't feel super satisfied.
Yeah.
Again, I enjoyed a lot about the episode.
Which is funny. Again, Jon Favreau saying like episode 8, people are going to be up, standing, clapping, and they're going to feel so resolved. It's like where?
And I was like, I was sitting there thinking, so is the story done?
Yeah.
But we know it's not. We know there's a movie coming, and we know Mando's going to be involved, and we know there's season 4 of The Mandalorian being. Favreau said the scripts are done. Favreau said the scripts are done for season 4.
Yeah.
So here's the big question: is season 4 going to continue with Din Djarin, or are they finally going to switch who the Mandalorian is? And I think that's the big question, because this felt like the ending, the conclusion of the story of Din Djarin and Grogu. Will we see them more? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But as far as the focus, this felt like the ending of their story.
I mean, if you're going to see them, it's going to be like a cameo. They're going to be the side characters that happen to be in the episode, you know?
Yeah, but if they do season 4, they're going to essentially going to have to open up a whole new story, and maybe they jump forward in time quite a bit. That's always a possibility.
Yeah, and that's what we had talked about.
And I think that kind of really needs to be the case. If we're going to if season 4 is going to continue the story of Mando and Grogu, I think we're going to have needed some time to where they've kind of just been doing a peaceful, their own thing.
Yeah, maybe like, Grogu's grown up a little bit.
Maybe Grogu's a little older, you know, and just kind of feel like things have changed some, so that it feels like there's been some time. But
yeah,
I don't know. Overall, I just felt a little conflicted, but we really need to go.
Yeah, we're late already.
Classic.
So, guys, again, thank you very much for listening and watching along with us. And we've had a great time with this series. Again, it maybe not everything that we would have hoped for, and yeah, it felt a little. It felt like it needed to be more than it was, I guess, and it was kind of a means to an end. But at the same time, it's still Mando. These last 2 episodes were a great time, and
great season finale, mediocre season.
Perfect explanation. So, guys, again, feel free to reach out to us.
That Ahsoka in August, right?
Hey, there you go. It's coming up, and Dave Filoni's baby child. So it's gonna be probably pretty good. So
I got high hopes.
Yeah. Don't break our hearts. Don't break our hearts.
Please don't.
So, guys, thank you so much for listening. Feel free to please always reach out to us in the comments or shoot us a message. We just want to hear from you guys so much. It really does mean a lot to us. Again, thank you so much for answering our community discussion this week for those who did. We see a lot of familiar faces and some new people, too, so we're very thankful for that. But please feel free to like us and follow us on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, on YouTube, and all these different places, right? Especially on Facebook, where we're going to try our best to keep up with news as it comes out. We try to have, like I said, community discussions and polls and things that you guys can interact with, and so all that good stuff. But we also would be very thankful and humbled if you would follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and leave us a review. Again, those do help us out a lot when we try to get sponsorships and things of that nature, which we're trying to always work on, but we would very much appreciate that. But thank you so much for listening, and we'd ask that you would join us next time as we continue on with our great podcasting journey. But last but not least, may the Force be with you, and we thank you for joining the Jedi Return.